Welcome back to the table. Today I have set up a game to talk about that is Ezra and Nehemiah from Garphill Games. This is by far, I think, their heaviest game to date, and it is a very interesting theme that I don't think I've seen anyone approach before. This is the biblical story of Ezra and Nehemiah and the rebuilding of Jerusalem, which is the capital of the Israeli people. So this actually draws from the biblical account of these prophets who traveled to the city in order to rebuild it and kind of bring that Jewish faith back into that city. And this feels like a very well-researched concept because they really tied in a lot of what you're doing into that theme. And it actually starts with the game board itself. The board is the city of Jerusalem, and it kind of starts wrecked. It starts with the gates are destroyed, the walls are destroyed. You have to kind of rebuild it over the course of the game. So when you're looking at the game board, you're seeing that represented all alongside the outside edge of the city. Now, this is a game in progress that I've set up to kind of show you so that I can touch on a few of the things that are going on here. But at the start of the game, you are going to seed each one of these spaces with cubes that represent rubble. One of the actions that you're going to have to do during the game is collect that rubble as you kind of clean up the walls and then rebuild the walls by placing cards down in those spaces. Within the city, you've got a few things that were historically significant. You've got the temple, which is represented here by this tile, and this tile is going to change out based on a player count because there's going to be more spaces for more players. You've got the altar here, which the altar had to remain lit, so you're going to be contributing to that burning of resources in order to keep the fire lit. Over here, you have your scribe track. These are the various scrolls that represent elements of the Torah. And actually, if you look beneath them, they actually kind of more thematically tie in and give you actual specific references to the Torah there as well. You're going to be placing scribes out there to kind of teach. And then right here, you have this little tent section where you're going to be kind of moving around, and this represents the kind of traveling of the different tribes. Over here, you're going to have a section of the board where you're going to place workers in the form of Levites. This is, again, another historical example. The church was able to bring in, or the temple was able to bring in these Levites and kind of provide for them. And in turn, they helped out the church as well. So there is quite a bit going on here. You have this temple that you're filling up with resources. You have this altar that you're trying to race to the top of. You're trying to unlock these different scrolls, which are various powers that are going to kind of help you along the way. You're trying to rebuild the gates and the walls on the outside, and you're trying to influence the three prophets. And the three prophets are represented by these cards: Nehemiah and Ezra, who are kind of the title characters, and Zerubbabel, who is another important historical figure that was working in the city as well. Now, all of these different things are going to be influenced by the actions that you can take on your turn. This is where the game starts to get pretty heavy. And in fact, some of the things that I'm talking about, or some of the ways that this game plays out, feel very much like a Vital Lacerda game. So if you're familiar with that level of heaviness, I think this kind of game would be right in your wheelhouse. Everyone starts with a deck of 10 cards. These are the same 10 cards. Every single one of these cards is going to offer a few things for you. It's going to offer a number of colored banners. It's going to offer some sort of victory point condition, and it's going to offer some sort of trade action. On your turn, you have to play one of these cards. And you're going to see on the player board, you've got 3 slots in which you can play these cards. Every round, you're going to play one of them, and the banners that show on top of the card are going to be active for your whole round. However, as you play, you're going to be playing cards on top of cards, therefore covering up some banners and giving yourself new banners. So the number of banners that you have is going to be fluctuating throughout the course of the game. And these banners are incredibly important because those are the action points you're going to spend on your actions. So if you can generate red banners, every time you take the red action, you're going to count, okay, I have 5 possible red banners. And then you're going to look at the board and you're going to see how you can spend those banners. So these banners are kind of split up between 3 colors: the red, the gray, and the blue. And those do influence the board, and it's kind of split up into various sections. Over here, you spend your red banners on both filling up the temple and lighting the altar. You spend your blue banners here on the scribe work and moving around the tents. And then your gray banners are spent around the outside to kind of build out those walls. And again, there's a whole process for doing this. On your turn, you have to play a card, you have to take a main action, and then you can take an auxiliary action. And there are two types of auxiliary actions you can take. I talked about how every one of those cards has a trade action down at the bottom. You can take that trade action. A lot of these trade actions have you spending coins to get some of the resources that you'll need to build, or to get bread, which is something you're going to have to use to feed your workers. Or conversely, some of these have actions where you can sell goods or bread to get silver, and you're kind of doing your own market exchanges here, turn after turn, as you play these cards. If you don't want to do the trade action, you can develop your player board. Every player board starts with 5 different inserts, and these inserts can be flipped. And these are going to be doing a variety of things. There's a couple that give you actions you can take. There's a couple that give you some benefits in between rounds. And then there's one that's going to hold your resources and give you some benefits there as well. But this player board can be upgraded. Now, these development tiles are going to be slightly different for every player. So even though you do have the same 10 cards, you are going to have a slightly asymmetric play experience because the tiles that you have are going to be different. 2 of those tiles in particular are very important. You have your trading tile and your elders tile. These are places you can place workers. Not that this is really a worker placement game, but you can take some of your available workers and place them in those spots. The trader can just gain you some resources, and the elder can gain you some extra banners. So you're starting to see that there's a variety of different ways you can gain those banners, both from the cards that are face up in front of you, from placing the elders, and then some of these scrolls that you have out here can give you banners as well. Every time you take an action, like I said, you count up all those banners. So for example, if I'm taking the red action, which is the temple on the altar, I add it all together, and then you can see right next to each one of these things, there is a cost. For example, I could spend 3 red banners and a wood to gain 2 flames on the altar track and move up 2 spaces on the altar track. Now, there are reasons that you're going to want to do either one of those actions. Filling up the temple can get you some goods and some points. Moving up that altar track is going to get you some benefits every round. And that process is kind of the same for every different action. If you look over here, you'll see that each one of these levels of scrolls requires a different amount of blue to be spent, and then over here to move your tent, again, you're spending a different amount of blue. So you're kind of treating that as a resource, adding it all up together and spending it over time. Now, the main theme of the game, rebuilding those walls, is done out here by collecting resources and then spending those resources to build the walls by taking resources off, and then by placing your wall cards onto those spaces and kind of creating a fresh new wall and getting some benefits in the process. Now, there's a lot more interconnectivity that happens between all of these different actions. For example, placing Levites out here in the temple is going to give you some more resources to spend. Connecting your wall segments to gates is going to give you some bonuses. Coming to these some of these scrolls is going to give you some bread bonuses. Moving these tents around is going to give you some bonuses, and you're going to get some incremental points along the way. But the real points you're going to get is from the scoring section that happens after every round. Each round is representing a week of the calendar. So this is kind of an abstract concept. They say like the real rebuilding obviously took multiple years, but they're kind of condensing down your sections into weeks to represent the actual Jewish like calendar of 6 working days and then the Sabbath where you rest. And that is your scoring phase during this game. Now, there's an interesting concept here with these workers. You have a specific amount of workers that you can spend during the game. Any workers that you put on the board as Levites, or put up here on these scrolls, or put up here on these different gates as you build these gates, are out of the game. And you only start with 6. So you need to find ways to spend or to gain more of these workers over the course of the game. You might have placed these workers as you were taking actions. You might have placed them on those trading or those elder spaces, and they're out of the round completely. Whatever workers you have left at the end of the round can be spent as laborers or farmers to get you a little bit of extra food or a few extra goods to gain on your next round, because you do have to feed your people. All of the workers that are remaining that you have that are not out of the game have to be fed. Your Levites are being handled by the church, but everything else has to be fed, and you'll lose victory points if you don't feed them. So you really do want to make sure that you have workers available in your pool to spend and kind of cash in between rounds to gain all that extra food. In addition, every round, you're going to tuck one of your cards under your player aid to serve as a scoring card. It's going to give you a banner that you'll have permanently for the rest of the game, and it's going to give you some kind of scoring objective that's going to score after the end of each one of these weeks or during each Sabbath. And there's 3 rounds in the game, so the first card you play is going to score 3 times, the second one scores 2, and the third one is only going to score once. So when you're planning your rounds, when you're planning your very first scoring card, you want to kind of lean into something that you're planning on doing or that you think you're already going to be doing because it's going to score multiple times. However, that card is now out of the game. It is only providing its topmost banner. You're not going to be able to get those bottom banners, and you're not going to get access to that particular trading action anymore. And some of these trading actions are really good. They let you buy more workers or buy more bread or some things that you really need. So you have to be very careful when you're deciding which card to tuck under there. The rest of your cards that you played are all going to get shuffled back into your deck. You're going to draw one so that you always have 4 cards in your hand, and then you're going to proceed to the next round. Now, there are a few things that you have to do income-wise in between the different rounds. You're going to look at this altar track, for example. Every round, these prophets are going to move to different spaces, and they're going to require you to go farther and farther on that altar track in order to keep gaining benefits. If you fall too far behind, you'll actually lose benefits as you go. And there are multiple different cards that you can use, and they're double-sided. So there's 4 different altar cards you can use when you're setting up the game. So you're not going to have the same game every time. Not to mention, these scrolls out here, there are a ton of these scrolls. So again, you're not going to have the same scrolls every time you play. So there's a ton of different variability when you come into a new game. You'll have to kind of learn what these scrolls do. You have all these characters with all their unique scoring conditions that you have to learn. So there really is a lot going on here. All of this stuff kind of connects together in a really smart way, but it is a very thinky game. Just that whole concept of, yeah, you only take one action, but you have those banners and you have to spend those banners in a very smart way. You have to try to earn more banners while also maintaining your resources. You need to have the resources you need to build the walls. You need to have the resources you need to get new workers, to go to the temple, to go to the altar. There's a whole lot you're doing here, and it does come together to be what I would consider to be their heaviest game. They've said that. I was a little doubtful until I played it. Now that I do have to agree with them. This is a step up even from like the West Kingdom trilogy. So if you like that style of game, if you're a big fan of Lacerda style games or anything that's on the heavier level, this is very much going to appeal to you. It is a very thinky game that really rewards forward planning, and it also stays very thematically tied into the source material. So this is Ezra and Nehemiah. This is coming soon to crowdfunding, so you can take a look at the crowdfunding page for anything that I missed or to see what all the final components are going to look like. And please leave any comments, join us in the Discord, let me know if you have any questions, and until I see you again, make sure everyone has fun at the table.